So we know that this particular organ is not that good at what it does. Okay, it just hasn't been around for long enough to be. It's our responsibility to vote with our wallets.
Are you starting a religion?
Yeah. Is there a cult? Where do we sign?
In order to find out the truth, you always have to
take out the gun.
Welcome to the 7th episode of the Kimudo podcast. My name is Udo, and this is Kim.
Hello.
Today we have a special episode with questions from Reddit. And to make it even more special, we have our first guest. Say hello to Ina.
Hello.
All right, Kim, you can start with the first question.
Because you already found out, what's one thing you'll not fuck around with?
People's mental health. Like, when I was younger, I used to manipulate people a lot.
Nice.
And once you push people over this edge, you never know what they're going to do. Like, there is no method to crazy. Don't do this. Don't manipulate people. You never know what's going to happen. And it can be very wild. So this is my piece of advice.
That's a good one, because for me, when I think about guys and bar fights and things that we are so stupid that we enter when we turn into 18 because we want to prove we're men and, you know, all this stupidity that happens. That's the one thing I realized, is that once I figured out that I'm not as stupid as I thought I was, well, you know, because I realized that I can learn things and I can, you know, recite information and I can connect dots. I realized that I am a thinking, intellectual, sane person, quote unquote sane. You can, you know, take that with a grain of salt. But I realized that I could never, from that point on, once I had that thought, I realized I can never have a fight with anybody ever again. Because I was quite an aggressive kid during my early teenage years. I was very angry, let's just say. And once I came to this realization, you know, once I was a little bit older, you know, mid-20s, late 20s, that I realized there are some people who don't function on the same level that you do. So you can only enter a fight if, one, it's going to be like life and death, and you're aware that those are the stakes. Because you never know that you're fighting with a person who that might be what he's thinking, and you do not know crazy. So unless your stance is the same, meaning I've got nothing to lose, I'm going to take this to the nth degree, meaning, you know, life and death. If you don't play with those stakes, it's going to be a question before you run into someone who does play with those stakes, and that'll be the day you lose your life. That'll be the day you lose. So I realized from that point on that, unfortunately, because I can think about the repercussions of my actions, I can therefore not fight anymore. I literally cannot be on the same level as someone who, you know, might be on drugs and, you know, might think that his life isn't worth anything, and today's going to be the day that he's going to, you know, fight you to the death or whatever, and he's too drunk or something like that. You know, you never know. So I think about that a lot, that I hate seeing people fight with physical violence in bar fights or anything else have you, because I know that is going to be a differentiation between the two fighting on what they've got to lose and what their thinking is like. So you just look at the one person who's more crazy than the other person, and then the person who's less crazy, you know, kind of probably should definitely, you know, get out of there for the sake and sanity of keeping one's life. What do you think, Udo? What's your answer?
Well, I'm just imagining you in a fist fight right now.
I can't imagine myself in a fist fight. I haven't thought about that for a great many years. I definitely am not interested in. I'm a short, fat, chubby guy. Not really, but I'm definitely not a tall Viking like my brother or my family. So yeah, I'm not fighting anybody.
But you're good at running, right?
I'm a great runner. Yeah. If anything, that's exactly what I'll do. I'm a great runner. I can run a half marathon and put some distance between the person. That's what I would be doing. Absolutely. If someone wants to come and fight me today, that is 100% what I'd recommend. Anybody that I love would be, look, if it's a knife, the good thing about knife is that it's short range. So you just put some distance as fast as you can. Try to be healthy so that you can actually run and get out of situations. That's kind of my recommendation for everybody anyway, right? Is that make sure you have a body that can do what you would need to ask out of it in a worst case scenario. Meaning, if you drive a car to work all the time, make sure you have a body that is strong enough to where you can climb out of a, you know, flipped car, for example, in a somewhat reasonable time, you know, in case, imagine the car is on fire. And imagine that's like the worst case scenario. I think everyone should try to aim to have quote unquote enough health so that you can preserve your life in case you need to. Because I see some people who are so big that can't do one push-up, so if they fall over, they can't help themselves, which you want to be careful with being there.
Stop calling me
I
out.
think it,
I'm sorry.
Did I hit a nerve?
no, I think that it's interesting that you talk about stuff like this because for me, it's not running, it's disarming. 90% of people that use a knife in a fight, they hold it incorrectly. So if they point the blade on you, you can disarm him easy. The problem is when they hold it backwards, the blade. This is the time when you cannot disarm them easily.
I think that
So if anyone keeps the knife backwards, this fucker knows what he's doing, okay? He's been there so many times.
Don't mess with that.
This is time to run or take out the gun if you have one. But yes, it's like if they point the knife at you, they don't know what they are doing. Disarming would be pretty easy. And therefore, it's not only about that, I think it's about other people around. You're not usually completely alone. And if he has a knife out and someone else tries to be there, they could get hurt if they don't know how to correctly disarm a person.
yes, if it's just you and and someone else and you can put some distance, that's one thing, of course. Now if your family, your family can't run, or your grandma's sitting there, she's wheelchair bound, and she's not going anywhere quickly, sure, maybe you have to disarm. But I would be careful to tell the whole world that it's easy to disarm someone with a knife. You have no idea what the situations might be. What if would you say that to everybody who's listening? I hope not, because please be careful. It's knives are serious things. What's the old saying? You guys have heard the old saying? In a knife fight, the winner dies in the hospital and the loser dies on the crime scene.
Mm.
Like knives are not like bullets. They create huge gashes and it takes seconds to bleed out. Seconds. So yeah.
What I
Scary
meant
stuff.
is like if you can do this, this is like
I would say if you have no other choice but to do this, ideally always run and try to get everybody to block a door, do
safe
anything.
space. Yeah.
Do anything, but don't. I wouldn't say enter the pocket with someone with a knife and you don't have a knife. I would never use the words easy, quote unquote, to disarm. I would say block a door, get everybody out.
I think it's background difference because I was taught to fight from very young. I was like 5 years old. My dad taught me wrestling because he thought it was fun.
What kind of wrestling?
Like normal wrestling. My dad was a wrestler, almost a professional one. So he was showing me how to grab a person to flip them without almost any force. Of course, he didn't let me flip him, but I know where to grab and how to go. So I did it later on in a few brawls because I was also a troubled teenager. I also had to be fair, in the neighborhood, there was no guy that was standing up to me when I was around 10.
You mean standing up for you?
No, standing like against me. No one wanted to fight me because they knew it will end up with them going home very hurt.
Good for you. It's rough. Some people have to do this by necessity, and unfortunate. For me, this is going to change the question completely. This is why it's interesting to write down these questions and have you guys answer them, because you can view it completely different, or you can read the same question and interpret it completely differently. So here's what I wrote. Because you already found out what's the one thing you don't fuck around with, I wrote down energy drinks. That's a completely different answer, but that's because I drink energy drinks, I think, from about 13 years all the way up to like 27 or 28 or 29, somewhere around that ballpark I stopped. And for years, I had like heart palpitations and heart problems that were like my heart would skip a beat so hard in the middle of the night that it would wake me up and things like that. And, after a while, I realized, I can't, but like an addict, like any addict, like an obese person who overconsumes and are addicted to hamburgers or something like that. I was addicted to energy drinks. So for me, that's the one thing. I can't smell energy drinks without like an addict, get those, urges to like to have one. And because I want one so bad when I smell them or see them, that's exactly what makes me not trust myself with one. So I haven't allowed myself to have a single one since I quit cold turkey. Yes, I guess 7-8 years ago now, which is pretty good. 8 years ago. So I've really kicked the habit. But I found out in the office that there's sometimes some Red Bull cases that come in because I guess they get sponsored or whatever a little bit sometimes, and they're handed out to all the employees in the office. And I haven't seen this yet. It hasn't happened yet, but I'm gonna have to. I've realized now that I'm going to come in contact with energy drinks that I really like for free in the office, and it's going to be difficult for me to smell that all day and or not take 1 or 5 of those energy drinks.
Just think about what everyone will think. The new guy is coming, and there are free drinks, and he's gushing like 5 of them. Shame yourself into.
Yeah, that's a great one.
discipline.
That's a good point. Yeah, think about what other people would think. Yeah. But I would, like an addict, you figure ways around it, right? So what I would do is I would just go up a couple of times throughout the day when there's different people around there, and then I just sneak 2 or 3 each time into a backpack, hoard them, take them with me.
Just imagine there is a camera.
Yeah, well, probably are, to be honest with you. Then the next question is, it wouldn't be like probably encouraged exactly, but also nobody would care if I took a couple of more energy drinks more than I would shame myself. It would be embarrassing. No, you're right. Imagine leaving the office and they just hear the sound of energy drinks like just in my backpack moving around. Okay. Fill in the blank. What is your personal there's a special place in hell for? And then we put in a bunch of asterisks in there. Fill in the blank.
People who hurt children.
Ooh, that's a good one. Why is that something that came up as an answer that you wrote down?
Children are literally innocent and defenseless. Like, what the hell can they do to you? So, purposefully hurting them, like, for me, that's pretty fucking evil. Like, even when I'm really stressed out or so, like, I would never think of hurting kids.
I kind of agree. Don't. But I was like talking about animals, because animals are even more defenseless. A child still can report it somehow, especially if they have good education. But animals, they don't speak, and what a single dog can do to a grown-up man, nothing. A child could report the man, but especially the prolonged abuse of animal or children, anyone that is defenseless is disgusting.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I think society should protect people that are defenseless and innocent. I mean, it's a saying, innocent until proven guilty. And that's how it should be.
Yeah, I wrote down people who abuse those with no or lesser power than you. So that could be power or authority, right? And so that's kind of what you guys are saying. People who are defenseless, animals who are defenseless. And that's exactly what I wrote it down to. Mine was just very generic, but that's what I always had an issue with, people who somehow come into power or for a reason or another is in power or authority, and then use that knowingly against someone or something that does not have as much or to have a say in it. That's rough. That's really rough. I find that to be right up there with cowardice, and really poorly. You should use always the authority when you finally get to power authority. If that's a promotion in a job or something, you should do everything you can to try to change the system from within so that it doesn't look so anarchic and realist. You should use it to create stability and hopefully pull up those who are below you. I kind of think of Joe Rogan always says, when you're looking at a country and if you were to rate the country about how well it's doing, you'd want to look at the lowest of the low, socioeconomically or medically or whatever. intellectually or by education or whatever measure you want to, and try to pull your country up by all of those measures, and you want to use authority and power to do that so that everybody benefits. You just want to have, like Joe Rogan says, less losers in your country. And that's so true. I think about this when I think about writing the book of stateship, is like you kind of want to go with the common denominator, and that's going to be the lowest usually. That's because that's going to be where the most, that's where if you're looking at Pareto rule, 80-20 rule, that's going to be where you're going to have most min-maxing of effect, I would say, is those with usually lesser power, if you have power over them. It goes into like stoicism as well, right? You would have authority over them, so you should use that to influence positively in the realm that you can affect.
Well, the chain is as strong as its weakest link. It's like there is a lot of there is a lot of connection to that, in my opinion, because if you feel strongly about one group, and let's say you all have to run because something is coming, then you will probably face a very huge conflict if you see one of your friends not running because they can't.
Yeah, exactly. Or if you're using the same, demonstrating it in an office environment, the weakest link, I would say, yeah, imagine if you have a whole office, everybody follows, VPN protocols and safety and logs in and changes passwords every so often. And then imagine you have a coworker who has his own laptop and uses none of this, and all of his data just gets hacked and leaked. The data only has to go through one guy. It only has to go through the weakest link. Then all of the data of the company is out there. But if everybody had some kind of standards protocols that were followed, met, and measured, then that would not be. So I think there are many ways of demonstrating what you're saying. I wrote there's a special piece of hell for people who stab right in front of you. I can't stand people who are walking and there's a flow of traffic, and maybe it's here down, like for example, I'll use my a big city like New York City, for example. You have people flowing, the one way and flowing the other way, and it's just so packed with people that you cannot just stop there. But people in these big, huge cities, generally, not always, know this, so they keep it moving. But for me, that's what I hate, when you have kind of, usually, not always, but older people who come from a time where they didn't have to think about people because there were not so many people on the planet or something. I don't know. But for whatever reason, they're never brought up with this thinking that when you need to think about something or look for your phone or dig through your purse or look through your book bag or whatever you're doing, you take a step to the right so you don't stand in the center of everything. You stand more next to the wall. And I think younger generation know this. It's been taught into them because they kind of came up in a world where it doesn't function if not. But a lot of really grandpa age and older don't seem to know this kind of rule, and they all the time stop in the middle of the thing to take a photo or just like the whole world has to pause for them. That's my personal hell. Standing in doorways, same thing. Don't stand in people's doorways. Move to the side. And litter. There's no reason to litter. That's enough. Have you guys? Isn't it weird? Like, have you guys seen someone litter and it changes your perception of them as a person?
Yeah,
Like,
I mean, it's not hard to take it home or find a trash can.
you guys are calling me out again.
Are you littering?
No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding. Like, before I litter, I just put that stuff into my pocket and then take it home, and then put it in my trash can at home. And most of the times, I forget to do it, and then my pocket's literally full of trash.
Mm-hmm.
But I was thinking about the people who stop in front of you part from Kim, because I grew up in a village, so there's not that many people, and as you said, and I just don't realize sometimes. And when I see, for example, a squirrel or so, I just stop and want to stare at that squirrel.
I think it's more about safetiness of taking a break. in a big city life, you don't have time for breaks. Whenever you live in more relaxed environment, the breaks are normal. And I think it's more like this. Older people usually, they didn't live as fast as we do. Like, we live as fast as humanity did live so far. So there is, I think that it's sad that we don't have time anymore to just stand wherever and take a break.
I think people need that nowadays, especially nowadays. I mean, look at the mental health crisis all around the world. And sometimes just stopping and then appreciating the beauty of nature, for example. It's very healing.
Or buildings, they also can be very pretty, especially if you don't come from the city. Sometimes the scenes that you see every day and seem so normal for you are one of the nicest views for other people. You never know. Just because it's different for them, it doesn't mean that they come from a place that is not nice. But the novelty of building the environment can make it into a much nicer place.
What's the lowest thing you've ever seen a person do?
Okay, I have a story for that.
Let's hear it.
So I know this guy, and he got scammed out of a lot of money. And the thing is, it was actually his brother who scammed him.
Oh,
And after some time, I was talking to him about that situation. Okay, and he told me other people are like that. Other people scam their brothers, but not my brother. I believe in my brother.
oh my
I know I can
God.
trust him. And for me, that's the best best example of sunk cost fallacy. Like, you're so deep into shit that you have to gaslight yourself into believing, no, it can't be. No, I'm not fucking up. No, this is not a failure. Like, that's how deep you are into failure. That the only way out for you is literally to lie to yourself. And that's in my opinion, like, literally the saddest thing ever. That you
Ooh.
can't accept reality, and then you have to make up something, lie
That
to
is
yourself.
heavy. So it's not just about the cost also, but it's also he devalued himself as a person, as a result of not being able to handle the reality of what's actually going on. So he just also, oh my God. Imagine being a brother doing that to your brother. Like, okay, partially you're taking money, but you're also like, abusing them.
Yeah, absolutely. And actually, I believe this happens all over the world pretty often. It's not as uncommon as people might think.
Yeah, there is a lot of examples where one of the more fortunate sibling bail out the less fortunate sibling forever, and give them the sense of safety that whatever happens, like my sibling or my family member will come to bail me.
Yeah, that's not a good attitude. And
Mm.
I would never do that. And I think it's good if I tell my siblings that I would never do that. So they have to realize and basically grow up and understand that they have to be capable of taking care of their own shit and not rely
Mhm.
on other people to bail them out all the time. And if I want my siblings to grow up into a mature and reliable person, I have to tell them the truth. Because reality hurts more than the truth. So telling them
Yeah.
beforehand, before reality hits, and then they are in debt, and I know the mafia is coming after them or so. And that's way better in my opinion.
I have a great relationship with my brother, and I just couldn't imagine thinking about either me deceiving him or the other way around, him deceiving me to the point where it's gonna cost us our brotherhood, our, you know, because I think he would probably say the exact same thing as I am, as that would there's nothing that there's no trade that you could give me that would be outweighing the benefit of having, you know, my brother like near and dear as a relationship to me. You know, it wouldn't be like, you could never put a number on that. For example, it could never be, you know, to destroy that. I just can't imagine what it would take for me as a person to do that. So I can't relate to the person who you were talking about there. There's, you know, are willing to scam their own brother and then accost them their relationship by default. Obviously, that's the minimum price, but also make that person, you know, live with that trauma for the rest of their life, you know, where they're no longer accepting reality as it's unfolding. Like they had a kind of a break, a mental break of sorts, right? I couldn't imagine that. That's just the craziest thing ever.
What if I gave you €1 million for that?
There's no chance.
Your
What did I
brother.
just say? I just.
How about 2 million?
Ina, what's the lowest thing you've seen a person do?
Holding appearance by lying. There are so many people that are so obsessed with holding like appearance, so with material things around them, that they do forget that those things doesn't make them good people. They have to be still a good person or good people to be able to hold the appearance. You cannot hide being an asshole. It's going to get out. It is up to you to change it. And holding people close by, you know, they do something bad and then they pay off. They do handouts because they want people close, but they cannot keep them by being themselves. This is disheartening because after a while everybody will leave. There is no way in hell you can survive being close to a very bad person by handouts. There will be a point where you say like, fuck this shit, I'm out. Kim, would you stay if someone hands you out but are a piece of shit towards you?
As I'm getting older, I find that I allow, so my bar is so very different now than it used to be from when I was younger. That there are many times where, yeah, I had, without sharing too much information, you know, gone through this and with exes, and yeah, I can say that I could only take it so much. It's just so far away from how I wanna present myself, how I think about the world, that I couldn't imagine. I can't. It's a compatibility issue if you have that view, if that makes sense with me, because I don't share that view at all. I couldn't understand. What are some subtle, unspoken signs that someone had an extremely traumatic childhood or a traumatic life?
Well, looking into stuff more than it's supposed to. I believe that, especially when you grow up in an environment where people get angry or upset with you, but they don't explain why, is a big sign. And most likely they will overanalyze something, and then a week after they are going to tell you that they feel bad about something, or you see them feeling bad, and it's like it's coming back, and you have to try to ask them to open themselves up what's happened, because they're used to it, that if they tell you that they feel bad in the situation, you will get only more angry.
Udo, what are some subtle, unspoken signs that someone had an extremely traumatic childhood?
I think if they are apologizing a lot, to me it sounds like that's a sign of, for example, a parent that has been blaming that person throughout their childhood for everything. So that person basically became the scapegoat of a family, and then they got into the habit of apologizing all the time.
Yeah, I agree with that 100%. I also apologized way too much, and it took, I forget who quoted it, but, and I'm sure it's easy to Google, but it was essentially, don't apologize for things that are not actually your fault, because then you should not apologize. Then instead, you should thank them for. So, for example, it's like a customer service trick, and if you work in customer service, you know this already innately. But it's if someone, for example, if an email takes really slow for you to get back from one of your other departments or whatever, so therefore you cannot reply back to the customer. What you don't do, what bad customer service is, you write to the customer and say, I apologize for, I don't have any answer for you because my dumbass coworker is not giving me any answers, so therefore I'm waiting on her and I can't get back. That's bad customer service. Good customer service would be, thank you for the patience. You give them what I call a who, what, where, and why kind of thing, where you just give them, I am in the process of this. It is waiting on this. Once that has happened, I'm going to come back with you either on a date or an ETA or whatever, and you can expect a reply from me by this date. This way, there are no things coming back to you. As far as just, it's just better communication that way. You write that you're thankful for them taking the time instead of apologizing for things that are not your fault, right? If it's your fault, you apologize, and then you should apologize. You should, when you make an apology, state what you're apologizing for, be specific in your language, and then you should always also state what you've done to counter or prevent this from happening in the future, and that you've shown that you've learned from this mistake going forward. If you do these things, everything will always generally be fine. But what people do too often with a traumatic background, and I'm talking about myself now, is instead you just kind of shut down and you're not assertive enough. You just go, I'm sorry. But if you're listening, if you're listening to how that sounds, one, doesn't sound like you are very sorry after you've said it so many times. But two, it's not coming through with sincerity and with assertiveness. But instead, when I apologize, saying, "Oh, I apologize for my slow response time. It is in this process. It's because of this, and it's blah blah blah." You give that, you can show, people will accept that much better. But it's just a matter of how you communicate. And trauma generally doesn't make you a better communicator. It makes you more sensitive to feedback and input and subtle things that other people do. That's what I wrote. I wrote hypersensitive to changes, and I wrote breathing and acting in others. What I mean with that is, I can almost feel like there's a shift in the mood because I am so hypersensitive to, because of how people in my near vicinity would react and explode very quickly. You had to be prepared for these energetic explosions when they would scream or yell or whatever, and usually it would come with changes in breathing or changes in pacing or sitting or whatever. It would be these non-verbals, and you have to, with trauma, you have to always prepare yourself for the next danger or emergency episode. And as a child, you generally get really, really good at being hypersensitive to these small little things. You'll find that people who have trauma in their lives generally will ask their partner, for example, a lot when they're not feeling 100%. Maybe your partner is thinking about work or something, and they're pacing a little bit extra, or they're on their phone a little extra or something, and that the person with the trauma will generally say, "Are you okay? Are you okay?" Because it's so evident to them that something's wrong, and it makes the person with the trauma usually either a bit anxious or if they were through therapy, generally the more healthy version of that looks like care instead. That they're maybe not anxious, but they actually care about you, and they're really generally worried because they can get all this sensitivity data coming through your body language and nonverbals.
So it's basically what I said, like over analyzing everything, because
Yeah.
a few faster steps doesn't have to mean anything. But where, let's say, at home, that could make that your mother or father is about to have a drinking episode, because they will just like paste this bottle, and then they will be annoying whole evening. So like oversensitivity is totally one of the
Lines.
and I think also, yes, I would also say that feeling not worth it is also a sign of abusive home, because whenever you have these hardships at home, no one tells you that you are worth it. You are an amazing human being because you are. You don't have to be anything specific, but you are, and this is already amazing.
Udo, what do you think?
Yeah, I agree with all of that, and I think I'm wondering how many people can actually relate to what we are talking about right now. And since there's basically a pandemic of mental health crisis, my guess is that a lot of people will relate to that.
I think so too. I'll throw another one out there. Hyper independence. This is another common trauma kind of response, that they're so used to the bar either being so low that there's no support structure, that they have to, if they want something done, they got to do it themselves because no one else is going to do it, because other people are not capable or caring, or they're just not reliable in whatever way that gives you some stability. And that happens also, I see a lot, where you get also used to the world not giving you kind of what you expect or want in return. So, because you're doing it yourself. So, for example, what I mean with that is, if you are hyper independent and you don't have a car, you might not get some furniture, for example, delivered to your house, because if you had a friend, or even if you have a friend, but you're not going to ask them for borrowing their car, or if they can help you move this piece of furniture, for example, because you have this trauma response in the background that you are hyper independent. I know some people who would rather die than ask their friend for a simple little request that generally the friends are happy to give you, because hyper independent people are generally giving out more favors into the universe than they take back, because they don't ever call in a favor. That's generally how they would, like I said, rather die than do that. That's something I see very frequently in people. So I can tell this in both professional settings, but also platonic relationships with people as you move through life. This is something that is usually like one of these big red flags that I can see people waving, and they don't generally know that they're waving it. That's the thing. They don't realize that they're very easy to spot if you know what to look for, of course.
It's so funny.
Go ahead.
Because I was moving recently, and I did buy a small cabinet, and I was carrying it on my own on the third floor because I didn't want to ask for a favor.
Yeah, and if you have a whole set of these, then you kind of have proof that you are the person I'm talking about. Then if you have a bunch of these scenarios where you realize that I will accept a worse outcome, meaning I won't get that piece of furniture, for example, because it would involve me requiring to either pay for shipping if it's offered even in the first place. But if it's not even offered, you're not going to ask a friend or or maybe rent a car so that you can get that piece of furniture home. So you just go, it'd be nice to have that piece of furniture, but whatever. That's something that a hyper independent person probably would choose, I would imagine.
I don't mind paying. Paying is fine because
Yeah, absolutely. Right.
Because like I can ask I can ask someone to work for me, but I cannot ask them to do it for free because I don't know.
Yeah, it
It
feels
doesn't work.
icky. Yeah. Yeah, and generally that's something that I've learned as I'm getting older and getting better at communicating with people, is that I realized that asking for favors, believe it or not, there's psychological case studies on these, shows that you improve your relationship, not lessen, by asking people to do something small for you. I'm not saying moving a piece of furniture is that small, but you know what I mean. From a range like that, and even or less, like, hey, can you spot me lunch today or something like that. Asking these small little favors, by the way, are good for your relationships. Just so you guys know, both platonic and romantic. So ask people around you for things. Okay, you might find that some of them are very happy to give it to you, but you need to create that opportunity. You need to ask. That's the difficult part. My last thing I wrote was not being able to handle small things, but being much better than average in emergencies, particularly the life-changing or the threatening ones. Another one where I have noticed people with traumatic backgrounds are always thinking about where their escape is. They know which door is leading them to the outside quickest. They know how they're going to get out of there. They know how to navigate some of these conversations. They know some of these downplaying defense communication strategies to reduce and smoothen and flatten the waters when you communicate. Some people, they don't like there to be any kind of discussion or heated debate or argument, because they will try to flatten these people, people who appease like that. Because handling small things then can also really like set people for a spiraling loop. But when it comes to emergencies, they're generally tend to be really good. Like, for example, if you're driving, and they will have really good reaction speeds and do some good maneuvering very quickly, whereas someone with a poor emergency response might have a fight or flight response that is freezing, for example. But I think that there are some people, of course, that fight or flight, they freeze, and there's nothing you can do about it. I think that's full stop, okay? But I also think it is partially like a skill, like anything else in the world. You can get better at working through emergency situations. This is what they do when they train you in the SEALs and all these different. They make you go through these very difficult things so that when you encounter it the next time in the future, it is not so difficult and there's not quite so many steps, but you've closed that gap of freaking out and reacting, or freaking out and being useful still, with all that adrenaline still pumping through your body. Okay, and people who have had a lot of trauma can be really, really good at managing things very quickly and knowing what to do. But small things, because small things can add up and become a big thing on a list or whatever, and they'd feel like you're being overwhelmed, and these small things are actually the ones that take you out. It's kind of weird in that sense that you have this dichotomy of being really good at the scenarios where everybody else generally find it much more difficult to react and do the right calls when, like, in an emergency situation. But small things most people handle just fine, whereas these people with trauma generally can be the opposite, that they spiral out because something difficult but small set them off. But if these are the type of people you would want to be there for you when emergency situations happen, where maybe you need to require to call an ambulance or whatever else have you. You guys notice this too? Do you know of any people like this?
I think that's why psychopaths kind of target these kinds of people, because psychopaths can use these people to their advantage.
Of course, it's always easier to prey on weakest and people who had trauma in their life. They are in general weaker. I'm not saying like overall, but they have some cracks that will never heal. And anytime, psychopaths and sociopaths are very good at looking at those cracks. You can see them; they are very observative because they had to blend in with normal people, and they will observe and learn where it hurts and stick a finger there when they need to put you in your place to use you.
Yeah, and I think they're also hypersensitive that we were talking about to small little changes, like you're saying, because they learn how to mimic emotions or facial expressions and various things because they don't innately have it. So to blend in, they learn how to be sensitive and look for other cues than to help them navigate this manipulation that you're talking about.
But for them, it will always just be superficial because they don't really feel empathy.
Right.
So that's basically something to look out for. If someone is just empathetic on a superficial level, then that might be a sign of some ulterior motive.
Anything else you guys want to add to that one before I move on to the next one?
Nope.
I'm good.
Okay. Next one I have written down is, what invention do you think contributed the most to humankind? And I'm looking at some of you guys' answer, and I'm going to start with Udo here because I feel like I want to attack it immediately. Go ahead and defend. Go ahead and defend your first point, sir. What invention do you think contributed mostly to humankind, and reason why? Go ahead. No pressure.
Okay, so I honestly think religion and belief is a very huge factor for the success of humankind. And when we compare humans and animals, for example, animals don't have a god they believe, or multiple gods they believe, and try to reach out to for help or aim to become an Okay, we have to cut that part out, man. I got Udo'd again.
All right, let me do this. I'm gonna try this real quick. Okay.
Okay. Right, give me for 10 seconds, and then I will have a thought that's more straight.
Okay. Should I reread the question?
Yes.
Ina, what invention do you think contributed the most to humankind?
The wheel. I mean, transport, a lot of machinery, everything runs off like some kind of wheel. So to be able to go to processor microprocessors, we needed like all of this logistic chains and everything that wouldn't work without the wheel.
It's funny
And
because I went through these questions, of course, and when I put this through AI because I'm obsessed, and the wheel is what came up as well.
it is because if you look at it, it's not only like transportation wise, but also all the machinery, and we could automate so much things to the wheel that we had the time to put and will to put the brain somewhere else. So usually I would say anything that makes your life much easier is like worth the invention, because that
Yeah.
means you have more time to wonder.
True, that's absolutely true. And I think in general, people are getting more sensitive, and basically the older generation is always saying, yeah, the younger ones, they don't know shit. Back in my days, things were a lot harder and stuff like that. But things should become easier, people should become more, in my opinion, more sensitive, so they actually become people that are more detail oriented, so they are capable of solving the next question and basically pushing humanity onto the next level. Wheels are kind of like big things, but they enabled the next levels of humanity. Microchips are extremely small and fragile structures. And before we were able to handle these, we had to handle the big things. And after microchips, there will be even finer structures, even more structures that are more fragile. And we have to be capable of handling those in the future. And for example, quantum computers might be one of them.
Udo, what invention do you think contributed the most to humankind, and why is it religion and belief?
Well, well, I think that's one thing that sets us apart from animals. And if you're capable of imagining something that is way higher than you, way beyond your capabilities, a god, so to say, then you're capable of imagining the perfect thing. And that's basically a star to aim for. What's the saying? If you aim for the moon, no, if you aim for the stars, then you might be able to reach the moon. If you aim for the mountain, then you will only hit the ground. So the higher you aim, the more likely it is for you to make great progress. And a belief or a god that is way higher than you, that's a good thing to aim for, in my opinion.
But do you mean it's like that you believe that you're going to become a god, kind of like in Buddhism, that everyone can become a Buddha? Or you mean by, okay, there is this amazing being and I want to be like them, or as close as I can in my imperfections? Because becoming a
Yes.
god could be a problem in some religions.
Yeah, I believe they call it blasphemy, and I think they frown upon it. Yes.
Stop that burn, you know?
Yeah. Unlucky.
Yeah, oops, I guess I got called out on my god complex or so. But one belief is, for example, heaven. People that believe in heaven and that they will be rewarded after death because of all the good things they did and all the temptations that they were capable of denying, refusing. Like you, for example, Kim, when you said that you wouldn't betray your brother for $1 million or 2 million euros, and that's a high belief. And I mean,
Yeah.
€1 million, 2 million euros, and you're basically set for life. You can do
Yeah.
whatever you want.
Yeah,
But
I'm not even considering it.
yeah, exactly. And that's basically what I'm saying. That's a high virtue, a belief that is more than you, more than what your body, what your biology needs. And aiming for something that's higher than you, that's my point, basically. That's what sets humanity apart from animals, because animals can't think that far ahead into the future. They see food, like just this morning, Kim, when you showed your dog Jackson a piece of cheese, he was completely focused on that. He just wanted to eat that. But humans can think beyond that. If someone is on a diet, for example, when they might see a piece of cheese and think, yeah, that's I would rather have a salad because I'm trying to lose weight right now. So they are capable of resisting the temptations because they are thinking about something far, far in the future that will be way more rewarding for them.
I personally think that religion for me was ruined in high school. We had a history teacher, and he was very open with teaching the history that you would never ever be taught in Polish school. He was going with the more fact analyzing than whatever the curriculum says. And he said to us, like, imagine you lived 2,000 years back. You have a lot of people that didn't really figure out everything yet. The average IQ was lower. So how do you stop somebody from stealing, for example? You don't have a police, you don't have that much of the power there. So how do you stop them from doing those things that are bad for society? You say that God sees them. They cannot see the God, but if they believe that there is a God that is going to judge them for that, no matter if any other human sees them or not, then they will start to think, and then they will obey. And if you look in a lot of rules that are in religion, like all of the fasting and everything, all of those things are for human well-being. And it was to a lot of rules there were to keep people healthy. And then a lot of believers were like, okay, I followed the rules, I'm healthy, God gave me health. But the thing is that this is result of them following a healthy lifestyle. And I'm happy in the society. Why? Because society is healthy, because what we do is healthy for society instead of thinking just about our own needs and goodness or well-being.
Spoken like a true utilitarianist. I'm proud.
Ina, are you religious, Ina?
I am not. I was a lot before, and when he threw this fault on me, I was dumbfounded. I went for the Bible 3 times after that. And looked for all of the signs. I had the whole I think 30 pages of notes on that. And I was going from one big rule to another, and I couldn't disprove that. So I thought, okay, this is Christianity, let's go further. And I went through Islam with that. I went through all the big major religions, and it checks out. You know why I'm just putting it out. It's not 100% that is why, but do you know what is a probable cause for people from Muslims for not eating pork?
I never thought about that. What is it?
It's because it made people probably very sick. It's a much more difficult meat to keep bacteria free, right? So if you're eating
Exactly.
pork, that's gonna hurt your population a lot compared to if you choose a different meat.
Exactly, and it's also the one of the meat that spoils the fastest in warmth. Which means because the warmth will. That's why in Judaism, as far as I'm concerned, up to some point it was also prohibited to eat pork. Right now, I think in some communities it is allowed because it's safe.
Yeah, you know what's interesting? Our modern time version of that is bear. If you talk to a lot of people in America and you ask them if they would eat bear, they would look at you like, "Are you insane?" Because bear meat has trichinosis inside of it, and you have to cook it out. Okay, and when you cook it out, you do this through a very aggressively. which means that the meat becomes thoroughly cooked and you kind of have no choice in it because you have to kill the trichinosis. Okay, what happens then is that people generally, once this process is done, then you then from that point on can, like, season it, make it however you're going to consume it, to make it taste like how you want it. But you have this inferior meat by now because of that cooking process. So a lot of people don't know how to, from what I understand, and I don't know what I'm talking about, so I should be clear about this. I think I have eaten bear, I think, but anyway, many people don't know how to cook bear. Number one, and two, it has that stigma of, oh, you can't eat bear meat, that's gonna make you sick. Yeah, but that's just like, yeah, but you used to say that about pork, some few thousands of years ago as well for a similar reason. We know now better. You just need to start eating more bear meat, but cook it thoroughly, of course.
And even though I don't necessarily agree with religion, I still believe that it is helpful and useful for some people, especially if they are in a very bad space, and to help them go through this like big things in their life. Religion can be very useful. Religion can be heartwarming because almost all of them believe that there is goodness in the world. So I don't say necessarily that religion is a bad thing, especially because it did put us forward, because we did follow the morality of this. So, but I just find it hard to be like actual. Like it's outdated in my opinion at the moment. We know better.
You know what's really funny is that I just realized that someone, now I've been working too much probably lately, but I just realized that the Bible is an SOP for how to live life. It's kind of like it gives you some SLA. Before, if you're people, okay, long, for you thousands of years ago, and you don't get that old as a person, and many people die in infancy, etc., then you need to transfer and learn experience very quickly. We agree? And if you write this down, you call it the Bible, and here comes this book of holy rules, and you just follow these. It makes perfect sense, like Ina is saying, that if you know how to read, you should probably then follow these rules, and there'll be a good general outline for how your life will be better than, because it takes many years to come up. These philosophers go through their whole lives thinking about it, and then they die. And before they die, they write down this work. So it's a huge you have a whole lifetime worth of learning on each one of these rules. So I get it. It's great. If you have no standard, no SOP, no manual on how to go through life, the Bible gives you that too. But, and Udo knows what's coming now. The reason why I asked the question to Udo the way I did is because I am very much an atheist. Never have ever had belief, not even spiritual. I wish. I'm interested in UFOs. Maybe I'm open to it. Ghosts. Okay, cool. Come and see me. That'd be great if I could, figure some shit. But I would say, as a counter then to what Udo's saying, is that you pointed out that I would not compromise my relationship with my brother for any value of any offering. And so my argument would be, you don't need religion or belief. You can aim into the stars without those, and you can get there through, well, as you know, the way I do it is I have all my international relations theories and political theories and all these writings from very intelligent people that I tend to follow. And then I base my morale and ethics on that, right? We've identified before that I'm very much a utilitarianist in my approach and thinking, not in everything, but... And I didn't need religion to get there. My uncompromising relationship for my brother is not unwavering because I have a God that I believe in, or a heaven that I believe in, that compels me to, if not, I'm going to go to hell. My argument would be, that's you're aiming lower now. You're not aiming at the stars and the moon if you're saying that. What you're saying is, it's a very low ethic and morale, which is, if you don't follow these rules, you will go to hell, and you do not want to go to hell. And so a person who is of low IQ and low education, meaning thousands of years ago, which now I'm talking about your average population now, right? Many people are not literate, etc. Okay, then you go, yeah, that makes sense. If nothing else, I now have a personal motivation to not do that because I definitely don't want to go to hell. I don't care so much about morale and all this fancy stuff. I'm trying to survive out here, right? Maybe I'm stealing food from people who have food and you're poor, right? You're not going to care about your morale. But what might compel you? What might compel a person like that? Yeah, this fictitious, excuse me, I don't mean fictitious, but this place that is not on this planet, that's called hell, and you definitely don't want to go there. So, and by the way, God is always watching. I can get there with my political theories, and I can get there with education and knowledge from very smart people before me, and that I would say religion and belief in that sense would be holding me back. I'd be aiming a little bit lower than if my mind is open to any possibility, not just gods and something written down by a man.
Okay, I would say everyone has a different starting point, and for you, the way you learned about higher values is through the books that you read, the teachings that you had from your international relations professor or so, for example, and yeah, as I said, everyone has a different starting point, and one works for you, and other starting points, like for example, the Bible, works for other people. But at the end of the day, in my opinion, what the most important thing is that you find these values, these higher values, these higher virtues that will raise your standard of living. That you should not lie, that you should become a good person, be a good person. And to me, it doesn't matter where you learn that from, whether it's from your degree, whether it's from this book called Bible. It doesn't matter. It's what matters at the end of the day is that you learn these values. And for me, for example, I think these holy books, whatever the name is, I think they are mainly a collection of stories that someone has written down, and we should just read them and try to learn a lesson from them. It's just like the fairy tale of Snow White, for example, that you should not open the door to strangers because a stranger might be a witch that is trying to poison you. What I'm trying to say is stories that we hear or read, the main thing about these stories is that we learn the lesson from these stories, not to follow them into detail, like do exactly what they're telling us, but trying to understand the story, trying to understand what happened here to the main character of this story, and then learn from that, try to apply that to your life. I think that's what these holy books are for.
I agree with you. I don't have a problem with religious people, and I don't want anyone to take it that way. I have the stance that the same stance that I have with anything. If you have no problem with me being an atheist, I also don't have a problem with you being religious. We can be friends, and Udo and I, obviously, we are proof and testament to this. And I agree with you. I also think that I don't really care what your personal motivation is for getting to these higher goals, but I agree with you also that everybody should aspire to them, and having these scholars, psychologists, social scientists, etc., who write these great works but also religious leaders, same thing, who are thinking about, the thoughts that we all have when we're not hungry and we kind of figured out the basics, which is, why are we here? What's the purpose? What is my purpose, etc.? What's my standing in society or in my community or even with myself? And as long as you try to work on these questions and try to enforce also, I think the other thing is, as long as you enforce them, because we all agree that doesn't pick a religion. We all know people who are not good practicing people of that religion, right? That people who are in that religion would agree that they prefer that these other people were not calling themselves the same religion because they were a bad representation of it, right? We all know that. It's the same thing for atheistic people. Atheists is same here. I also think that there are people who espouse or say something like whatever that the moral ethics are, and then they turn out to be completely sleazy or unethical all the way through. That happens too. So you just need to, one, think about these questions, two, try to work on getting to that higher answer and that better aiming, like you're saying, aim higher, think higher, zoom out, always zoom out in your thinking, and then zoom back in and see where can I start, okay, and then zoom out again and then stay out there. But I don't think we do that enough. I think we're always zoomed in because we're thinking about us being small little ants in a big society of an ant stack, that we are not that effective. We don't do that much, but we do. But just aim higher, and then you'll inspire other people to do it as well. That's what this podcast is always about.
My mother always says, like, Carolina, what are you doing? You're not going to change the world. I'm like, I fucking will. I will do it my way. And I feel like it's a very good way. It's healthy for people. So if I continue to do this without breaking, there will be people who will join me eventually.
Also,
and I believe it's going to happen. Hopefully.
Are you starting a religion?
Yeah. Is there a cult? Where do we sign?
No. Not a cult. But what is, like, for example, what I practice is being gentle towards people, especially my coworkers, because I spend so much time with them, right? It's like 8 hours per day. This is like most of your awake time at work. Yeah. So I try to be gentle to them and see them as a human beings too. A lot of them have children. A lot of them are extremely tired. And I try to do a little bit extra because I'm single. No, I'm not single, but my boyfriend isn't here, so I don't have to take care of extra stuff. I'm just alone. I have a lot of free time, and I don't mind putting a little bit extra of myself. So we all feel better, because if I go to work and they feel very bad, I feel bad too. There is no way any human being that has emotions feels good around other human beings that are in pain or tired or whatever. It's not possible, in my opinion.
Utilitarianist part 2. It's the greater good for the greatest amount of people. You're realizing, can I afford to put in a little bit of workload extra? The cost to you, you're equating here that it is smaller to the average of the team than as if you were to leave it and then let the exhausted mothers who are also doing a million things probably outside of the workload that they already have. And you're going, yeah, the equation makes sense that I should push a little bit harder so that other people can have a smaller, a little bit lower average, however much that is. And that'll help everybody. Yeah, I think just like you, and it's amazing, but I think it's not super common to have this kind of thinking as hardlined as you and I think about it. Because I agree with you, I also think about it this way. I think many people would not. It comes into this enforcement thing that I was saying again. Yeah, you can aim and know what's the greatest good, but do you follow through and do this in your life? Stoicism would say, do this. It goes into what I'm saying is, if I go back to your mother, that you were saying,
mm-hmm.
the answer is, the question I would have asked my mom back is, okay, how many people is everybody? How many do I need? Because you could have in Stoicism a small community that you have great influence on. For example, let's say you're part of a church or something like that. You've listened to this episode, so I know you know what I'm about to say. You might have some influence on the churchgoers there, and then therefore it would be your moral and ethics to then influence them for the greater good, so that they do see it the same way that you do it, and then they practice, towards the same goal.
Mhm.
So you don't need to change the whole world, is my answer. My answer would be, if you could change one person's entire world, that person will then exponentially have a family structure with them that they can maybe influence. That then you see what I'm saying, and then that influences another person. You don't need to change the whole world. That's not realistic. You could change a little bit here. That's what we're doing with the podcast. The more people that listen to this podcast, the more people are going to be hopefully positively inspired to be critical thinkers, for questioning everything, and trying to discern what's good data and bad data, and these kind of things. That's always what we want to impart on the listeners.
I'm really thankful to hear your story, Ina. Because it's an inspiration, and you might inspire the two of us, for example, to be more kind, to be more gentle, and then this will carry on to my life. This will carry on to Kim's life, and then Kim might have a more positive and more gentle way of treating other people, to other people, and these two other people will again influence two more people, and that's literally exponential scaling, exponential growth. And as we have all learned in math class, exponential growth outgrows everything else.
It's so funny because like 2 days ago, I went to store. I live in Sweden, so it's people are not that open. And there was like a woman. I was buying snus, so like tobacco-ish thing. For those that doesn't know, and she was taking like the small presents, and I think she was putting it under the counter because it was almost closing time. And I was like, jokingly saying, "Oh, is it for me? You didn't have to." And she started to laugh a little bit, but I sensed that there is like some bad feelings behind it. So it's like, "Oh, I'm sorry if I joked, if it annoyed you." And she's like, "Yeah, you know what? Joke as much as you want, I know it's not normal in Sweden, but it's okay for me. And I'm happy because you made my day. I had such a hard day at work." And it was a nice thing to end the work with. I was like, yes, at least I did something. It's like, I can have a positive effect with such small things. You never know.
Yeah. Absolutely. And it'll change how she thinks about her whole dang day, because it could have been then like you're saying, 8 hours, 9 hours worth of shift, maybe 12 hours. We have no idea. And then you're finishing it off with a nice like little touch where it changes how she thinks about the whole day, not only tomorrow, but the day after that too. She thinks about like, man, that was so funny. Faith in humanity restored. It doesn't take much. Yeah. No, I do the same thing. I also like to allow my quirkiness or my the way that I stand out. I allow it to shine a bit more than I have. When I was younger, it was more about the saying, a nail that stands out gets, put back inside. It just gets, nailed back. And now I find that, yeah, people first react a little bit interestingly. Because first they look at you like, okay, this is not about to be a normal conversation, or this was not a normal, you knock them out of their whatever mode that they were thinking about, That's one. But then two, once they've digested what I've said or whatever, and they come back with a reaction, it usually follows with like a smile or something that, because you made them snap back to present time because they had to think about the answer they were going to give you, And then you can usually get a nice smile or something like that. And I find that I'll pay the small cost of seemingly stand out a little bit with my quirkiness or my questions, because people here where I live don't generally expect you to be kind of Americanized in your openness. So I'll ask them, "Hi, how are you?" And here, if you ask them, "Hi, how are you?" it's a bit of a personal question. It means that most likely the person probably you knew that they were sick for the prior 2 weeks, and you're asking them, "Hi, how are you?" But meaning, are you feeling better? But if you give them a smile and you continue with some kind of pleasantry or whatever, pointing out something nice, they'll generally go, oh, they'll think differently about you next time you come into the store, for example. So, yeah. Have weird
I mean,
conversations with people, I guess, is the
yeah.
recommendation.
I was like, when I was young, I figured out I'll always stand out. So I decided, okay, at least I want to stand out positively. Like I want to
Yeah.
have a positive impact.
Yeah,
Like, there's no way I can. It's like I wait. I have too much of my own thoughts to be able to do exactly 100% what society says. But at least I can try to do this, like stand out and make it better for other people.
Yeah. For me, it's like if you're gonna stand out, you can do it involuntarily or voluntarily. I just chose the voluntary. That's all. When you own it, people react more positively to it. Okay, going back to my answer for what invention I think contributed the most to humankind, I wrote down the internet. And I did a little bit of researching on this one because the internet, if this is the first time those of you who are listening hear someone say the internet as a human, as an invention, the reason why, of course, is obvious. The internet, is the best. This podcast wouldn't exist without it. But really, I'm going to go as far as saying that internet in the future, already kind of in part today, as of recording, 25th of August, 2024, that UN declares internet access a human right. Now, this is kind of in contention a little bit because I did sit there and read, and I have some sources, if you Google it yourself, that says that, UN scoop right, UN declares internet access a human right. United Nations reports declares internet access a human right. Variations of the same theme with, basically United Nations and human rights, but this is because they find this podcast got really dark, and it's about to get even darker. I apologize for this. We're gonna make sure we ended up on something a bit more positive. But here comes, we're in about the center of it now. So let's go deep. I took in one of the humanities classes as part of my degree was genocide. Okay. And in genocide class, I learned, this was university level, I think about 3,000 for my American listeners. 3,000, maybe 4,000. No, it has to have been 3,000 or 2,000. It had to have been a little bit easier than that because I think this one was a bit more introductory. But in any case, in this genocide class, I remember they were talking about there are steps towards genocide that don't necessarily involve the killing of a people. For example, it can be that you mutilate the people so that they cannot procreate, and thereby you've ended their bloodline. For example, that's considered genocide. And you can go down the steps of more severe and less severe. For example, defacing your enemy or whoever you're trying to oppress, for example, is one of the steps towards genocide. And they're adding one more step now, and that is they're trying to make it so that internet access for a country, if they have internet access, for a regime or an authoritarian or any body, would come and remove that, would be then considered a step towards genocide in the future because of what is happening here with the UN, etc., declaring internet access a human right. Thereby, if you rip internet from your people, you're stripping them of a human right because they're tying them together, and therefore you are committing one step towards genocide, which means you have all these international legislative bodies and military armies that then have step one towards moving an army and towards the people, etc. Right? So this is fascinating to think about the internet as you have a right to internet access. If you go to Wikipedia, you can Google this: right to internet access, also known as the right to broadband or freedom to connect, is the view that people must be able to access the internet in order to exercise and enjoy their rights to freedom of expression and opinion and other fundamental human rights. That states have a responsibility to ensure that internet access is broadly available, and that states may not unreasonably restrict an individual's access to the internet. So, for example, one of Udo's favorite topics is Elon Musk. This brings into question what happened there when Elon Musk brought into Ukraine all those, what are they called? Udo, what are they called? Starlink.
Yeah.
And he enabled access into internet, what happens in the future when this looks like this, where he can move these satellites to aim them at any country in Africa, for example, and restore internet access when authoritative regimes, for example, cut the power or cut the internet and block. Now he can literally give human rights access to internet back to people who are being stripped of it. Because all these things, these are so important that we know for a fact, there are studies on this, that one of the steps towards genocide of ripping people's internet access off is because you make them less able to communicate what's happening to them. It's number one. So information, they're severing that information between the oppressor and the oppressed and the rest of the world who can view, as a result. You cut off all of that video feed, all that data does not go out, and you keep it all localized. So very important in the future that we're going to need to think about. Maybe, I don't know, the world needs to make a Starlink system that is controlled by some international relations body that can, restore access on a large scale very quickly to various places in the world, because oppression happens all over the world at the same time. So this would probably be a huge capital thing, and I don't know how you would fund it, etc. This is just a thought I had, but interesting stuff, no?
Yeah,
I think internet is.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, continue, Ina.
I think internet is also a place where we learn culture, where we can download games, consume music, consume videos, which is improving ourselves. And actually, is another Swedish accent. Do you know who else was thinking the same? 3 guys that made the Pirate Bay. It was a Swedish site on the beginning, and they were believing that everybody should have access to culture, which is like games, music, movies, and that it shouldn't be behind the paywall. That's why they were facilitating sharing of the goods that were illegally shared at the end, but they were not completely. They were facilitating. They were not doing it, and it was kind of a ripple in the Swedish law because they got persecuted for that. They went to prison for that.
They did.
They are in debt for life because of that. But they did basically a tiny bit of extension of internet access because they wanted to have people to have access to the culture. And living in Poland, which was worse economically, dollar was very expensive at the time, which means all of the games were very expensive. Like to make a comparison, if I was a teenage and I was working to buy an AA game cost, I would have to work around 20 to 30 hours with my wages.
And then you play a game that lasts 4. Unlucky.
Exactly. So this, like the Pirate Bay, was amazing for me because I could access this culture. And I will forever be grateful for the guys. Like, honestly, there should be a GoFundMe for them so to not continue being in debt forever.
Yeah, the 3 gentlemen that you're talking about is Fredrik Ney, Peter Sundé, and Gottfried Svartholm. So yeah, we owe a lot to them. I agree. They did have really they were as much political leaders as they were software developers that were just thinking about these things, because they were a Pirate Bay became also a political party that espoused a lot of these free internet copyright questions that they were being discussed and thought about, like who owns these things. Can they charge whatever they feel like, no matter where you are. And I think a lot of the things about the Pirate Bay that was really interesting is that I remember authors in the beginning were really, really pissed about torrenting. People were torrenting their books because they were feeling like the same thing as musicians and also the motion picture studios, that anytime someone downloaded something, that was money lost from their pocket. Okay, But then there was some data that showed that that's actually, when it comes to books, exactly the opposite. That people who torrented and downloaded the books eventually got kind of eye fatigued and ended up buying the real book as a result. So book sales actually went up a significant portion anytime. So people who were publishers of books and authors would self-torrent and seed their own books so that people would, because it had such much larger exposure because of what you're saying there. Many of us, it was the same thing from my situation. I was a poor kid growing up. We were not in the market of ever consuming any of these movies in the first place. We were never going to have the money to get these games or all this music. So, being able to get them was absolutely mind blowing. And yeah, I am also very thankful that I had a childhood that fell right where all this was possible, and the cowboy wild west was going on, because I get to be like, back in my day, for the rest of my life.
Yeah, it's not
I
going to
remember
happen again.
Kazaa, and they would name the file something different than it was that they were claiming it was. They could just do that. You don't remember, you didn't know what like a file type was back then. Yeah.
You know that they also applied, those three guys, they applied for to become a Swedish novelty because the Pirate Bay was so big and started to be big abroad. The most downloaded thing was the Swedish manual to learn Swedish to use Pirate Bay. So they wrote to the king and said, like, hey, we are popularizing Swedish language all around the world. Like, we deserve to be novels,
I mean,
We
duh.
contribute to the country.
Yeah,
That was so
unbelievable.
funny.
It's so
And
funny.
But I find it it's so refreshing to have this freedom of doing what you believe is right. And they were doing it in the gray zone. In my opinion, law-wise, there was no law that was prohibiting facilitating stuff like this. There was no law. No exact law about that.
Yeah.
Because, I think that they upgraded it to the crime, because facilitating law infringement is not the same as facilitating a crime. So I think, just before the trial, they did bump, these things into, the crime part.
Right.
In some way, but it was in my opinion from the very beginning the law arguments were very stingy. It was you could feel that it's not the state that wants to prosecute it, it's another players, it's a lobbyists that are pushing there, because Sweden is a music giant. It's a giant.
Yeah, it always has been. I think it was from a lot of pressure from the MPAA or whatever, the Motion Picture Association of America, whatever. I think, I'm not entirely sure. Allegedly, they were the ones who were putting a lot of pressure on the Swedish government to, one, find out how to prosecute this, because it was a loophole, like you're saying. Because torrenting as a system was, you have a puzzle piece and I have a puzzle piece, and I am just showing you, here's where you can take this puzzle piece from this guy, and here's where you can take a puzzle piece from this guy. And then we're not saying that you can assemble it together on your computer, because that would be illegal. But, here, so it did fall between the cracks, and that's why it was really so difficult for them to do anything. And then until they are doing, I think what it is what you're saying, which is, here, now we're going to push this into the criminal part, and then use that to prosecute them with. They ended up only getting, by the way, for those of you who are not familiar with it, in April 2009, they were found guilty in the Pirate Bay trial in Sweden for assisting in a copyright infringement, and they were sentenced to serve 1 year in prison and pay a fine. And then they were released in 2015 after serving shortened sentences, so they never did spend much time in there. I wanted to say just one more thing, just to quote it before we move on, which was on The Verge. I'm reading now on the website, so I don't know the credibility of the website, but it's theverge.com. They wrote, UN condemns internet access disruption as a human rights violation, and they have a whole lot of information about, like, for example, some nations sought to weaken a resolution like that. Can you imagine? Imagine being a country who goes, you know what? We don't think that ripping internet access as a human rights. maybe look, there could be an argument for it if you think that it should not be placed with like a human rights like part level, but rather you want to structure it differently. But something towards it should be done. I feel like, right? I don't think it shouldn't be kosher that some countries just go, yeah, we're gonna limit this part.
I mean, disrupting can be good warfare-wise. So, like, imagine you have a war, and you move your troops or equipment or whatever, and everyone is live streaming. It's like if everyone is live streaming and someone can trace where you are, they know exactly where your troops and forces are, which takes away the surprise effect. This is why I would find, like, in the hardest of the warfare, I would understand why they want to disrupt the internet feed. And
Yeah.
I understand why they would like to go to the short range communications. But in my opinion, disrupting it in one space, I feel it should be allowed, but also the way it is, like, you can take a picture, you should not go to the war zones in the first place. If you happen to be in one, you can take a picture just to, like, document it and get out of there. And there, when you get out of the range, you are able to share. That's my take on that.
Hello and welcome to my vlog. This is the war zone. People are getting killed.
Shit's crazy. I'm gonna get to GTFO. Stay tuned.
This is sponsored by.
But just look at the Ukraine. There was so much feed of people laying dead on the streets and everything.
Yeah.
Does the family give consent to show their family members being dead on the curb?
Horrible.
Do we think it's moral to do this?
Yeah.
I believe, like, what I believe at that we have enough journalists, enough dedicated journalists. Let's leave it to them because they know the rules. I wouldn't like to go to Warzone and report from that without knowing the rules, because journalism do have rules about showing dead bodies and so on, which are made to be respectful towards the deceased or their families.
So it's interesting that you say this because, okay, I'm reading here on The Verge still, internet shutdowns around the world are becoming more common. And what they're saying is that various countries have blocked various amounts of, or throttled various amounts of information, you know? So for example, this is one of those things where maybe it could be, you know, blocked and throttled so that the information stays more, you know, because yeah, you're right. It really shouldn't be that someone can like live stream from a drone in 4K, you know, your uncle getting murdered and it could be on X within, well, it's live streamed literally at the same time. You know, it's just so crazy. But when I say this, because look, I'm reading, just in the last month, social media sites have been throttled in Turkey after terrorist attacks on Istanbul's airport. Mobile internet has been shut down in Bahrain and India following local protests. They shut things down, and social media has been blocked in Algeria simply to stop students cheating on school tests. So this is what it means with internet shutdowns are more around the world are becoming more common, is that I guess this is actually an increasing issue, is limiting this. So that's another interesting thing then to contend with if we're going back to Elon Musk's satellite links, and then we're back to enabling then, for example, then drones and all these things. There has to be some kind of line that we have to think about this first of all, because right now it's just cowboys, right? It's just wild, wild west. Anyone can post anything on X and you can watch it right now if you want to. All this Ukraine drone videos, you can go and see all of it right now, you know? I'm not saying you should not. It's horrible stuff. It'll change your life. But then blocking, you know, some countries doing these little partial blockages of social media, for example, that's one thing. And I'm not saying, you know, go all full China on it, you know, block everything. But maybe some parts, like, you know, live streaming 4K drone murder videos, probably. In many countries, first of all, it is illegal to watch what's called snuff videos of people dying. Just so you know, it is literally illegal in many countries. So, but that doesn't stop the technology from existing and from videos still being uploaded, and you can still view them, online. So maybe if that could be blocked, something like somehow, could be maybe okay.
Honestly, I think recording is okay. I would even go as far to say that it's good because there's more evidence of things happening. Imagine we have more recordings of, for example, the assassination of JFK. When historians in the future have more information that they can work with. I would argue against uploading like horrible scenes like these drone footages, uploading that immediately or even live streaming it is bad, I think. But at least have the right to record historic events, because I think it's very useful to have different angles to learn from, because the truth is, in order to find out the truth, you always have to look at different perspectives.
And we need everybody with different perspectives, as we've talked about, Udo, before on different podcasts. We need it because we realize it's better for everything. Mother Nature seems to encourage the diversity.
But at the same,
Yeah, continue, Ina.
but at the same time, maybe we should be more mindful about the rules, what we should post, what we should maybe contribute to some database, because then we have to adapt. We have to have some database that is used for archives, and then we have to decide who has access to this database. Processing that will be exhausting mentally for people, because there is no way that you're not going to be changed after seeing those things. This is like what the detective says, like whenever they catch a serial killer and they see what they were doing, this is a huge mental luggage that they're taking for the rest of their life. That means that it's very hard, in my opinion, to just say, in my opinion, the atrocities of the war are not necessarily on the people that commit the crime. I think that we should have a capital punishment still for people who facilitate war. For people who make the war, who attack countries and everything, they should be prosecuted immediately. If they started the war, they needed to be prosecuted, and it's a capital punishment, in my opinion.
That's a very interesting point, which kind of gets us to realism, which is something that we talked about on another episode. Because who's going to prosecute the biggest player on Earth? Who's going to prosecute like the US, for example, or the CIA when they're doing a coup d'état in a smaller country? Who's going to prosecute them? It's super difficult to do things like that.
I think that every one of us has a responsibility to judge in that cases. We as a society should be the judge. And as Kim says, like, vote with your wallet. You can make a real change if you decide that someone is playing dirty. You can really make a big change with your money. You feel maybe it's not a lot, but the way we consume can say a lot to the companies what is okay, what is not okay.
Yeah, and it'll spark invention, and they'll base research and development towards what we're as a consumer dictator we're interested in, and that's where money will be. And companies are always going to follow where the money is. So it's our responsibility to vote with our wallets. I think, I really believe that. we should all do that. We should really consider the money to be, ideally spent on a local level, ideally in business that you really like and have a kind of a personal relationship with, however that looks. Great. I'm not saying you have to, be best friends with anything, but know a little bit about the business, know a little bit about where you're putting your money, and try to avoid spending money in places where, they're showing that they don't care about the things you care about. This podcast is flying through. We have so many more questions we could fly and continue. I feel like we could definitely do a part 2 in this one. I am skipping through. I wanted to get to some more positive things so that we can end this podcast on a few, maybe 1 or 2 more positive questions, depending on how long our answer is. So, for me, I have one question. What's one thing you think everyone should try at least once in their life? And then I have another even more positive one I think that we're going to go through after that. So, Ina, ladies first.
I think say exactly how you feel, especially in an uncomfortable conversation or situation. Let's say someone makes you very sad or makes you very angry, but instead of being rude with that, just say, let's say your boss called you. You can say like, you know what? I am so sorry that you feel this way, because let's say I do my job as good as I can, and I'm very frustrated here because I try so hard, or I don't see point in trying because you're completely every day you're criticizing me. So yeah, I think it's being honest in a respectful way is something that everybody should try, completely honest, especially to bosses or people that are close to you, in which cases we always try to limit a tiny bit our responses, because one way or another, they're important in our life.
How can someone if you're nervous about doing what you're saying here, how can someone take small steps to get the courage or low stakes conversations that can get them towards feeling comfortable and moving to, something big, like a big conversation, like with your boss, for example?
Research assertiveness, because assertiveness is the way of saying no, or I don't feel good, in respective way, respect. Sometimes it is good that at the spot, maybe if you're too stressed, you can say okay, I'll think about it and I'll come back to you. And after hour or 2, when you're ready, when you went through all of this in your head, you can come back and say, I feel frustrated, or this stops me from doing this. Instead of making it into a shouting match, you make it in a conversation that leads somewhere. But assertiveness is researching that. There are so many techniques there. Internet is very good at it, in my opinion, right now. So I believe it's a first way to go learn more about that.
And I would add to everything you're saying, just also write down what it is that you're trying to be assertive about. You need to have your points clear, not only to your boss or whoever you're communicating, but to yourself as well. Make sure you removes all the fillers, and all the not so important points. Make it concise. Really make sure you have a statement in there, and think about a statement as if you were to write a short speech or something, perhaps like that. And then after you know what your points are and what you're arguing for, then make it into a bullet pointed or flashcards or something like that, so that you can come across it. It's a bit like fake it till you'll make it. It's a skill like anything else. If you are not assertive, you can try to fake it, and the way you fake it is basically doing the things that are smart for any speech writing or any kind of communication like this. Is just prepare. Convince yourself that this is the correct. If it's not, if you don't believe in your own argument, then change your argument until it makes sense to you, so that you can really passionately convince and argue for. This is why this is how I need this to be this way, or I can't, this is the problem, etc.
So Udo, what do you think?
Yeah, I
Oh,
agree.
we had the
And
same thought.
I think yeah, start small. Maybe don't don't try to take on the giant first. Like maybe don't talk to your boss first or so. But try to be more assertive with kind of like smaller fish, like people that aren't too pushy. To kind of it's kind of training for you to become more assertive.
I think I'm the only one who goes go big or go home. This is like for me. It's like uh, I believe if you are able to do it with your boss in a nice way, nice manner, I believe that you can do it with anybody. And so sometimes it's just a ledge you have to jump off, and if you get fired, you get fired. You know, there is a lot of work.
For me, I had these low, short interactions because I am an introvert as well, and I was not a person who felt comfortable talking to anybody at all. In fact, when I first started answering, when I got one of my first jobs working at a hotel, I had to answer the phone, and I shook so bad, and I had such a stutter that I don't think it was incomprehensible to the other person on the other line. Poor schmuck. But I was so not assertive. I was so unsure of my self-confidence. I was so unsure of my language skills. I was so unsure of how I was going to be perceived and met as a reaction. And I just got real big in my head that I could not even order like a McDonald's burger through a drive-through. I paid my friend so that he would order it for us, and then he would get the burger as a payment for just asking the question because I hated it so much. And that's how I avoided that. And of course, everybody who heard me say that just now makes everybody realize that that's not how you get good at it. Yeah, it really isn't. So what I would do now if I was not very assertive is I would have these short stakes, low stakes, quick interactions that I know have a natural end to them, like making an order. So make an order to drive through, for example, and you might go, okay, well that's too easy for me. Okay, well if that's too easy, then the next step would be do it in a way where you're playing almost like a character, maybe like a confident character, but try to make it a confident character that isn't arrogant, and then try to find that balancing act in that line, and then fake it till you make it. See if you can make that convincing to where you think that the other person believed that you were a confident person, or or if you or be brutally honest and if you think that you maybe said some lines that were actually more arrogant than they were confident, maybe, then that you went over the line a little bit and pull it back a little bit. But I think practice like anything. It's a skill, and you can get much better at it. So just do this. The benefit of having these interactions that end like that, you make an order, is it's like being on stage for 7 seconds and your performance is 7 seconds long. Can you hold a performance for 7 seconds and act like you are an assertive person that is making an order confidently? Try that out. That might be really positive for you, I think. For me, my answer is I recommend everybody try most things that are safe for you to do. You have to decide what safe means. Of course, you draw your own line where that is. But safe meaning, if you're gonna bungee jump, make sure it's a professional company with good reviews and good and thousands of jumps underneath their belt, so you know that they're good at what they do. But then do bungee jump, right? Be part of that. Do that as an experience. I think that if we know anything about life, we know that experiences is what makes us happy when we look back on our lives and think about what did our life become and amount to. It's not possessions. We know that already. Possessions, we don't, they've been proven that they don't make us happy for very long, but pleasant memories and pleasant experiences do. Okay, so if you're going to do that, go and travel as much as you can. We know this is good for your life and your body and soul, if you will. And also get a bunch of experiences. So go and do things. Try most things if they're, quote unquote safe. Again, if you're allergic to shellfish, I don't say go and eat some lobsters. No, maybe stay away from it for you. You don't have to try all the things, but do try and push your boundary on what you allow life to be for yourself. Because I think it's so easy to be comfortable. Our default and base is don't push your boundaries, right? Be comfortable. Don't stand out. And then you'll have a comfortable life that way. I think the exact opposite. I think all the good things in life are kind of a little bit at the more difficult things, which is push your boundaries, do be uncomfortable, go and sign up for that half marathon or full marathon race, be uncomfortable, learn what that feels like, because that's where all the good stuff in life is. So I would say try out most experiences. I'll say one final thing because I know I've been long-winded on this. We know that your prefrontal cortex, and I hope this is correct. Gosh, roast me in the comments if I'm getting this wrong. But in the prefrontal lobe, for example, we know that we have this part that simulates experiences and simulates taste, for example. We also know that that part of your brain is one of the more newly developed parts of your brain. It's not been there as long as the others. So we know that this particular organ is not that good at what it does. Okay, it just hasn't been around for long enough to be very good at what we do. Okay, and that is simulated experiences. We are really, really bad at thinking about, okay, what is this experience going to be before we do it? You know, whether you're thinking about going for a go-kart. You know, am I going to pay some money? How much does it cost? Do I think I'm going to enjoy driving these go-karts? Yes or no? Does it look fun or not? Right? And we use it so often in our lives, but we have to know that it's not that good at what it does. If you simulate licking wood and then you go to lick wood, it probably doesn't taste what you simulated it. But you get it close enough to where it goes, yeah, I imagine that licking wood probably doesn't taste that good. I can imagine what that tastes like a little bit, and you'll be somewhat close, but it's not going to be as if you took one by one and compared it to wood. Just, you know, it tastes too different. It can't be what you simulate. You know, you almost can't simulate different wood tastes, right? So we know this is not very good. So what I'm saying is, if you think, no, I'm not gonna enjoy this experience, or no, I'm not gonna do what Kim is saying or recommending, I'm gonna skip this one. If you do that too often, I think you're missing big parts of your life, and you should not be so quick to skip these parts, because I think regret is one of the bigger things when you're looking back on your deathbed. Regret is one of the bigger things that you're going to be consumed by if you don't make the right choices and try to take these opportunities when they're presented to you, and try to create these opportunities. Try to travel more often. Try to, you know, try more shit is what I'm saying, dude. What else do you think, Udo? Is there something else people should try?
Basically, the same thing. I wrote down the same thing. Everyone should try to push their limits. You called it push your boundaries, but basically we mean the same thing. But staying in your comfort zone is not good. And you only really experience life when you're out there, when you're doing things that you've never done before. That's how you grow.
And ultimately, what's the worst that can happen? If you don't like it, you just don't do it another time. You don't have to bungee jump every day, you know? If you try it once and you feel like it's not your thing.
But if you want to, you can. Not sponsored.
Exactly, that's the thing. You can discover a whole new thing, you know? And also traveling, my advice is you don't have to make a huge international travel. Sometimes just taking the bus to the part of the city that you don't know would be like getting the whole new city.
Absolutely. And go and do all the tourist stuff that other people would do if they visited your city. Go and do those things too. You know, if you have never done them, go and do them so you know what kind of the zeitgeist and the knowledge is about what people are going to say about your town, etc. You'll find that all these things will be new experiences if you haven't done them before, and it'll make you more connected to the place that you're in, and you'll make you more connected to the people who are also going to visit the same type of thing. I mean, what a win-win-win-win, right? Go and do that. Great advice.
All right, I'd say this is a good time to end this episode. Thank you guys for listening, and see you next time.
Bye.
Bye-bye.